When your skin barrier is damaged, sunscreen suddenly becomes one of the hardest products to wear. A sunscreen that normally feels fine can suddenly sting, make your skin feel tight, or make irritation worse. And that's the tricky part, because when your barrier is compromised, sunscreen is actually more important than ever. But the reality is not every sunscreen works well on damaged skin barrier. Some feel too drying, some feel suffocating, and some can irritate already sensitized skin. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Neha. In today's video, I am breaking down why sunscreen becomes critical when your skin barrier is damaged, which sunscreen filters tend to be better tolerated, and what ingredients to avoid in these formulations. And at the end, I will share these sunscreens that actually worked for me when my skin barrier was compromised. Some mineral, some modern chemical sunscreens. So my skin type is sensitive, it gets oily at times, I get occasional acne, and my skin gets drier indoors. And one thing I noticed while testing these sunscreens was actually very interesting. Some of the sunscreens that I have tested, I've tried, they work very differently depending on your climate. How they behave outdoors in real weather versus how they behave indoors when you step into temperature controlled AC rooms is something to be mindful of. And it is something I have never heard from anybody on the internet, and I feel maybe it's just me. Let me know if you have experienced a similar kind of situation, which I will be talking about later in this video. So let's begin with the basics. Your skin barrier is basically the outermost protective layer of your skin. It prevents excessive water loss and protects your skin from environmental aggressors and irritants. When the barrier becomes compromised, a few things happen. The skin starts losing water faster, a process called transepidermal water loss. And at the same time, the skin becomes more reactive. And that means products that usually sit fine, normal on your skin, they can suddenly start to sting and cause irritation. And overexfoliation, adding too many actives, harsh weather changes, or using too many products at once can further compromise your skin barrier. Now, here is something many people don't realize. UV exposure can actually delay barrier recovery. Ultraviolet radiation increases inflammation in the skin and weakens the barrier further. A study published in the Investigative Journal of Dermatology shows that UV exposure disrupts the skin barrier and increases transepidermal water loss, which slows the recovery of damaged skin. So when your skin barrier is damaged, your sunscreen isn't just about preventing pigmentation or aging. It's also about protecting the skin while it heals. But the challenge is finding a sunscreen that doesn't irritate already sensitized skin. And another big thing I don't see many people talking about: when your skin barrier is damaged, finding the right sunscreen, the right sun filters can make a huge difference. You might have seen this, heard about this. Dermatologists often recommend mineral filters like zinc oxide for sensitized or barrier damaged skin. That's because zinc oxide tends to remain mostly on the surface of the skin rather than penetrating deeper layers, which reduces the likelihood of irritation. Many studies show sunscreens with mineral filters like zinc oxide have shown minimal penetration through the skin and a strong safety profile. But that does not mean that all chemical sunscreens are irritating. Many modern sunscreen filters used in Korean or European sunscreens are designed to be very stable and well tolerated. Filters like Dinosaur S, Juvenile T150, Juvenile E+, these filters are highly photostable and widely used in sunscreens meant for sensitive skin too. So when choosing a sunscreen for a damaged barrier, it's not just about mineral versus chemical. It's really about the overall formulation, because even a good UV filter becomes irritating if the overall formula is not well balanced. When my skin barrier is compromised, I usually look out for these potential triggers. If it has high levels of denatured alcohol, if it has added fragrance, or strong essential oils, or very aggressive mattifying bases. These ingredients can be perfectly fine on an otherwise healthy skin, but on already irritated skin, they can trigger more discomfort. So when evaluating sunscreens for a barrier compromised skin, I look at the sun filters and the overall formulation as well. And having said that, let me show you some of the sunscreens that I have tested while my skin barrier was compromised and how they perform. So let's begin. So during the time last year, twice when my skin barrier got compromised and my skin was severely sensitive, I tested a few sunscreens to see which ones are most comfortable. Some of them were mineral sunscreens, some of them were chemical sunscreens with modern chemical filters, and some of them were tinted. And one thing, again, I would go back to the point I made in the beginning. I noticed something very interesting. Some of the sunscreens that would behave totally fine in the real weather, outside hot and humid weather, They suddenly start to make my skin feel super dry when I'm indoors in temperature controlled rooms. So climate and environment can totally influence on how your sunscreen feels on a compromised skin. The first ones are the Skin 1004 Madagascar Centella sunscreens, both SPF 30 and SPF 50. These use zinc oxide and titanium dioxide and are designed to be lightweight and calming. The texture for both of these sunscreen is creamy and hydrating. And because these formulas contain centella extract, they feel quite soothing on irritated skin. SPF 50, however, felt more soothing and more calming. For me, both of these felt comfortable both indoors and outdoors. They are lightweight, hydrating, and don't feel heavy on the skin. So if you prefer chemical sunscreen but want something gentle, these are definitely good options to look at. They do leave a little bit of white cast, but I feel it is still manageable. Next is the Cetaphil Mineral Sunscreen SPF 50. This one uses zinc oxide as a UV filter and is microbiome safe. Mineral sunscreens can sometimes leave a noticeable white cast, but this one is relatively balanced. What I liked about it is that it felt very stable on compromised skin. No stinging, no irritation. It has a fluid texture. If your skin barrier is very sensitive, mineral sunscreens like this can often feel more predictable. Talking about the white cast, in the beginning, it does look like leaving a lot of it, but give it some time, it settles and the white cast also subsides. Another mineral sunscreen I used was the Hyphen Mineral Sunscreen SPF 50. I actually started using this when I had a skin reaction after traveling. This one uses microionized zinc oxide, which helps reduce the white cast. Compared to traditional mineral sunscreens, the texture feels quite comfortable and lightweight for a mineral sunscreen. And during the time when my skin was reactive, it didn't cause any additional irritation. So this is another solid mineral option if you prefer zinc-based sunscreens. It does have a plasticky smell to it, which doesn't bother me much, but just in case. The next one is a new sunscreen that I've tried recently, is the Active Skin Repair Hydrating Mineral Sunscreen. This one also uses non-nano zinc oxide as a UV filter. And what surprised me about the sunscreen is that the white cast is actually quite minimal for a mineral formula, and that too with a non-nano zinc oxide. It contains ingredients like hyaluronic acid, niacinamide, vitamin E, squalene, so it's designed to be hydrating. But here is where my experience becomes interesting. In humid outdoor weather, it feels perfectly fine and my skin feels pretty normal. But as soon as I'm in temperature controlled rooms where the air is much drier, the humidity levels are lower, I notice tightness around my eyes and mouth, especially in areas where the skin moves more. So depending on your environment, your experience with this sunscreen can be different. Another sunscreen worth mentioning is the Tokobo Bio Watery Sunscreen. This one actually uses modern chemical filters like Dinosorb S, Uvinol T150, Uvinol E+, and Mixoryl SX. It absorbs quickly. It is super lightweight and hydrating, and it does not feel heavy at all. It feels like a moisturizer sitting on the skin. This is another good option that tends to feel gentle and non-irritating. Another sunscreen I want to mention here is the Numbuzin number 1 Clear Filter Sun Essence. This one uses new generation chemical filters, again the Dinosorb S, Uvinol E+, Uvinol T150, Mixoryl SX, which are known for being very photostable and generally better tolerated compared to older chemical filters. And despite being a chemical sunscreen, this feels super lightweight, super calming for a barrier compromised skin. The formula also includes calming ingredients like centella, licorice root, and hyaluronic acid, so it sits more like a lightweight hydrating essence rather than a typical sunscreen. For me, this is one of those chemical sunscreens that doesn't sting, doesn't irritate. Another sunscreen that was surprisingly tolerable when my skin barrier was compromised is Elta MD UV Daily Tinted Broad Spectrum SPF 40. This one is a hybrid sunscreen, meaning it uses zinc oxide along with octinoxate. Now, normally chemical filters can sting on damaged skin, but this formula uses a petrolatum and dimethicone base, which helps reduce transepidermal water loss and protects a barrier. Because of that base, it didn't feel particularly soothing, but it was stable and tolerable, and it didn't trigger irritation on my skin. Another tinted option that worked reasonably well for me is the Beauty of Joseon Tinted Mineral Sunscreen. This one relies on zinc oxide, so it's a mineral sunscreen. On my compromised skin, it felt tolerable, not extremely calming, but not irritating either. But I noticed something interesting. In air-conditioned environments, my skin felt slightly drier, especially around the eyes and mouth. In humid outdoor weather, that dryness disappeared and I felt completely normal. So climate and humidity can actually change how comfortable some mineral sunscreens feel on compromised skin. So if your skin barrier is damaged, choosing a sunscreen becomes a little more nuanced. Look for gentle filters, balanced formulations, and textures that support hydration rather than stripping the skin. And remember that environment matters too. A sunscreen that feels drying indoors may feel completely comfortable in the real weather outside. So sometimes it takes a bit of testing to see what actually works best for your skin. But protecting your skin from UV exposure while your barrier heals is absolutely essential. Because without that protection, the skin barrier simply takes longer to recover. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do, subscribe to this channel for more science-backed skincare testing and real-world product reviews. And that is all for today's video. I'll see you guys in my next one. Until then, stay tuned, stay beautiful.